Okay, here we go. Just rise up onto the balls of the feet and then lower your heels and start to feel the energy that connects from your feet into the earth. And as you inhale, lift the body, rising with the breath. And as you exhale, lower your heels. And breathing in, and breathing out. One more time, this time let the arms come up. And exhale, lower the arms with the body. Then take the fingertips to the tops of the shoulders and just roll the shoulders forward and back. Inhaling and exhaling. Breathing in, breathing out. Just letting the breath bring you more into the present moment. Release the hands, drop the chin forward, roll the right ear to the right shoulder. And send the breath to the space between the left ear and the left shoulder. Let the left shoulder feel very heavy. Feel the jaw softening and relaxing. Exhale, let the chin roll forward and over to the other side. Feeling the right shoulder very heavy now. And exhale, let the chin drop forward. And so you could draw a circle on a chalkboard in front of you or a whiteboard in front of you with your nose spiral, keeping the back of the neck long. And then the other direction. Let the spiral become smaller until you spiral all the way inward. And then let yourself find your seat, coming back to your seat, opening your eyes for a minute. Feel the weight of your body in your chair. Feel the heaviness of your hips connecting. And from there, take your attention to the inhalation coming in through the nose, and going down the back of the throat. Expanding the lungs, letting the oxygen flow through all the cells and the blood into the body. And this awareness of your body bringing you very much into the present moment. Breathing in and breathing out. And breathing in and breathing out. Now take your awareness to the space between the eyebrows. Allow it to soften. Feel the apple of the third eye begin to open. With the eyes closed, follow that awareness back into the middle of the brain. Now imagine that above, the crown of the head is opening and a cone of light is coming down through the crown of your head, down into the middle of your brain, and effervescent white light is just showering inside of your brain, cleaning out all your neurons and letting your thoughts slow down, cascading behind the eyes, behind the cheeks now, going down through the middle of the head, down through the palate of the mouth, through the neck, down to the heart center. Feel that cleansing of effervescent energy going down through your heart, belly, into your hips, and let all that energy gather into your creativity center in your hips. Rub your hands together, feel the heat between your palms, and as you separate your hands, feel the thickness of the air. And kind of draw your hands apart and together, feeling your own energy. Then let your hands, the palms of your hands, be placed just below your belly button, and feel the effervescence in your lower belly. Returning to the breath. And now your attention back to the middle of the brain. Notice how open and receptive and quiet the mind is. Just let yourself sit for a few breaths with this open, receptive energy. Just checking and noticing what thoughts might come up for distraction. Let them float by. Notice where there might be tension in the body. Send the breath there and let it soften and release and relax. Inhaling, feeling connected with all that is. Exhaling, releasing any doubts or fears. Inhaling, feeling your creativity connected to source energy and the art of imperfection. Just feeling very free, very connected, very childlike. Exhale, softening the jaw, releasing, relaxing even more. And then before we open our eyes, let's take one more deep inhalation, filling the lungs so full that it's as though you are filling a glass of water all the way to the rim. Now fill a little bit more, bring in the breath a little bit more. And let you, if you want to, just jot down any notes if there's anything that comes to you. A minute. What I'm thinking we're going to do is we're going to do a row of them up and down, and then because we're going to work wet, we're going to do one and then the next one, and then kind of go back a little bit and then do the next one and keep working as they're wet. And then you'll at the end pick the section that you like, because they're all going to be a little imperfect, and then you can cut it this way and and then this will fold and be a card if you want a card. Make sense?
Yeah.
I think last time we just did them all over the page, which was fun too, but you can see my mess behind me. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, so what size? I'm going to work like 9 by 12, something like that. Does this show up? I'm going to pin this now, blah, blah. So working to get the harmony of the colors to sing, we're going to use blues and purples. And purples are going to be the warmer color of blue, because purple is made from blue and red. So when you add the red or the rose madder, it gets a little warmer, right? So to get color harmony, you want warm and cool colors. And we're also going to use turquoise and 2 blues, a cool blue like an ultramarine, and then a warmer blue like a peacock or a turquoise, to get it to sing together. And yellow is the complement of purple. So I always feel a little bit like every word I'm being recorded. I'm going to make sure I choose my words wisely. All right, so hate to admit, but I'm going to pause this for a minute because, so to see value, you squint. So even if you look at the screen right now that's in front of you and you open your eyes, oh, there's my alarm. I'm going to go turn off my cake for a second, but I have a minute. Now squint and look, and you'll see that the color becomes dull, but the value becomes more prominent. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
So looking for contrast.
Okay.
To find medium, dark, and light values, you squint. And then when you open your eyes, you become more aware of color. So when we look at this flower here, one in each pansy, when we squint, we want to see the very light to the very, very dark. So like, for instance, on this is not the best example, but you can tell we go from the darkest all the way to the lightest, all in one flower. Excuse me.
Go get your cake.
Yes. Can you hear the alarm going off? I'll be right back.
No, I do.
So if you wouldn't mind,
No,
you don't?
no. I think Deborah and I don't.
So basically for my, I don't have a Prussian blue. It's also an oil color, but from my memory, it's a very dark turquoise almost.
Okay.
But we don't necessarily need it. I thought if anybody had it, they could use it. But we'll get the same effect by adding a tiny bit of black to our paint, our dark.
Or turquoise or ultramarine.
We're gonna kind of switch back and forth. It'll be so small that you can add it as you go along.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so for the flowers, I'm going to do a little drawing here. I can't see anybody yet because I have the spotlight on. But we're going to do, so you can see like in the petals, and I think that the example I showed you guys is better than this one, but they kind of tuck in behind each other. So we're going to focus on about 5 petals, and I'm going to draw mine darker than I want you guys to. So if I'm doing a card, it's going to be weird. This is the midline. The whole top part's going to be blank because I'm going to fold this. So I'll do just a little line to remind me. And then I'm going to do, like I said, a row of these so I can keep going wet, dark, wet. The top of the flower is going to have, because of Valentine's Day, almost like this heart shape. Oh, actually what you can do is do like a placeholder for a whole flower, like that, about this size. I'll do it darker. And then like a rounded heart with a little notch out of the bottom. We want to keep the center open for now so the yellow is really bright. And then a little space here, come around, space. We don't want it to be too perfect, but in kind of like when we did the pine cones. So we're leaving a little opening. What we're looking for, and it doesn't have to be everywhere, but then we're going to have a little white space here. See, so that the petals are wider, almost like Mickey Mouse ears. And there's this one's coming in front of this one. That's good. I don't want them to be. So you can look at this for a minute. I made my lines really heavy. So essentially I'm saving white here. I'll be saving white in a few areas between the petals. And it's all organic. It doesn't have to be even or perfect in any way. And then I'm going to lighten all these pencil lines before I start painting, and especially these guidelines. Those I'll take away completely. Now the one next to it, I'm going to make it a little lower because I might want to have 2 on one card. And I'll tilt my heart shape over to the other side. A little glit. You could even do like a little circle in the middle to remind you. Because again, you're saving the white. You can always fill it in with a little color later. Put this one behind this one or touching. So just let yourself feel really loose. Let your body feel really loose as you're drawing. Just kind of reconnecting to that feeling. I think I ran out of room here at the end, so I think I'm going to do like a bud going down. This will just be like a, and then I'm going to paint these in, but if you want to, you can put some little stem, you know, little placeholders for stems, where leaves might go, some other little buds.
If I drew mine smaller, should I just add more flowers or should I erase and draw them bigger?
If you made them smaller, here, I'm gonna stop the recording for 1 second, see what you're talking about.
I'm gonna copy what I think you were doing.
Okay. Was that Deborah whispering? Okay, so now I'm gonna take my lovely soft eraser and I'm going to lighten my pencil lines. I'm gonna stop the recording for a minute while I do that. But is anybody here left-handed by any chance?
I am.
Holly, was that you?
Yes.
Yay! So you're gonna probably want to work this direction, okay?
Yeah.
You're
As I was doing this, I'm like going, okay, I'm gonna start from the other side because this is gonna be bad.
Yeah, you're probably used to that your whole life, having to
Yes.
those kind of adjustments. Okay. So we are going to start with yellow, actually. No, water. Just water. And then yellow. And then a tiny bit of one of the blues. So the water is going to be with the largest brush. The yellow is going to be with the medium-sized brush. Actually, if you have two mediums, that's good. So I'm going to start with just filling in one whole flower with plain water. And I'm just being really loose. My body feels loose. I'm breathing, relaxing, just enjoying this process. Totally the art of imperfection. And I'm going to go right into my yellow, get it nice and juicy, enough that I can see it on the tip of my brush, and dot that yellow in about at least three areas. I want it to blur a little bit. Some of it will get covered as I paint, but you can see how it's there because the yellow is not easy to layer on top. You want some pure yellow. Okay, now while it's wet, and this whole area is still wet, I'm going to go into my blue. I'm going to make a very light blue on my brush, wiping my brush so it's not too soppy because my paper's already wet. And I'm going to start on the outside I'll start in the middle here near the yellow so it blurs.
Which blue?
I'm using like a cobalt for the first one, but we're going to do a bunch of different blues. So you could start with any blue you want. And I'm getting it wet enough that a little bit of it goes into the yellow, wiping my brush more. On this second one, I really want a very light edge here. So I'm gonna start even lighter here. I'm gonna go just for some, I think I'm gonna switch to a mid-sized brush. So the most important thing is I don't want to have to paint these, illustrate these flowers. I want the color to mix. And do a lot of that for me. And then I can put the little lines in. Okay, so I'm gonna hold this up so you can see. So now the color's blurring. I don't want it to be, I want it to touch in a few areas, but I don't want it to touch so much. You can see it's starting to turn green. I don't want too much green. So you kind of have to play around with that a little bit. And now I'm going to go into a darker blue, getting a lot of pigment on my tip of my brush. And I'm going to go in the mid-range here again because I'm testing it. I want it to go up to the yellow, but I don't want it to become green. So you should start to get these little veins. See these veins kind of happening? Ooh, I love those. That's what it looks like on the petal of a pansy. And it's tempting to start painting and mess with it. But if you just be a little patient, it'll blur on its own, you see? Now I'm gonna wipe my brush and I'm just gonna hit the edge of a couple of these using the point of my brush. So I hit the edge of the ones down here a little bit. You see? And I left the top ones, just let them bleed, let them be soft. Because I'm squinting. When I squint, I'm starting to see, oh, darks and very lights. Now, to get this to sing, I have this blue. I'm going to use a smaller brush. I'm going to go into purple, which is my warmer blue, because it has red in it. I'm going to go right into, and I'm going to take, so while it's still wet, got a nice dark purple. I'm going to actually go a tiny bit of black, just a tiny bit, into my purple. I can barely see it, but it deepens it. And now I'm going to test. I'm going to go in here at the edge of this, like, see, I'll come close. I'm going to put a little there. And so now the yellow starts to pop, but I want to leave, I don't want to cover up all my yellow. I just want to put a little bit of purple that's still pretty wet. So I'm going to let that dry here for a minute. I don't want it to get very dry. I'm just going to give it just a couple, just, you know, like 30 seconds. Going to wipe my brush and get my brush really thin here. And a little bit more black on it. And I'm going to go closer to the center. I'm going to start making some of these veins. Just pulling it out. So now I'm going to start on the outside of the yellow. I think I'm going to take an even smaller brush so you guys can see.
You're using purple there?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of purple. Now that I look at it, I have a lot of purple. I'm going to go back to blue. So you kind of go back and forth. I'm going to go back to I'm going to go into a dark turquoise and a little black. And I'm going to start to pull out some of these veins. You don't need a lot of them. So let's see here. It's hard to see. One, two, just a couple, because they're going to start to bleed. looks just like a mess. It's exactly what I
No,
want.
it's pretty.
So the thing is, it's going to start painting itself if you just let it be. And you can, I'm going to go on to the next one, but I'm going to babysit that one because as it dries, the color is going to desaturate. I'm going to want to add more blue or purple. The yellow is pretty good there, but so I'm going to go on to the next one with just water. And I'm going to let it touch this one in case it wants to bleed a little bit because I like that quality of watercolor. It's not really bleeding that much. It will though. It kind of does it on its own. The more fun I have painting, the more fun people will have looking at it. I also, this time, I'm going to try to leave a little bit more white in the petals. You can see here, has a little bit of white right there. It's very little. But in this area here, where the dark meets the light, you can leave some white because that's like the core of each petal where the highlight would be. And at the very end, we'll go back into the center if we want and define it, the edge a little bit. So this time, since I have blue, I'm going to make the tone of this flower lavender. I think I should use a mid-sized brush. Last time I did the big brush for the water. Not happy with that purple. I need a different one. Sorry. I'm mixing a purple that I like. Okay, this one's pretty good. So I'm going to start in the center. Oh my gosh, yellow first. Sorry. Good thing I remembered. Mercury retrograde. Gotta do my yellow first. That's purple on there. First, I have to find my yellow brush. Aha, there it is. Okay. Yellow. Just enough water on it to get it to bleed a little bit into the paper. Doesn't bleed at first, but it's going to. And now, that's blue. Here's my purple. So this is a very messy approach. At the edge of the petal, I want it really light. So I'm going to wipe my brush so that this edge here is very soft. I'm going to go back in and get just some water, leaving some white areas this time. Now I'm going to go dark. While it's wet, I'm going to wet my brush, get it juicier, put in more purple. I'm kind of dabbing it in those lines that I'm going to start to paint. These lines will soften. Now I'm going to go in with some very dark blue and black. Actually, I'm going to go just blue first. It's kind of a deep turquoisey blue, a peacock blue. Now I'm going to look back at my other one that's starting to dry. I have to make decisions. I like these petals. This petal here, when I look at it, I mean, they don't all have to be perfect, but you know, while it's wet, I have the option here to, I'm squinting and I want to give it more contrast. So I'm going to go in with a little darker. See, it starts to give it, let it sing a little bit. So I'm going to put this a little bit of darker, not everywhere, but enough. See, now squint. Okay, I'm going to let these guys dry a little bit, I think. I might actually, I don't want to do a lot of this because I'm going to lift a little bit, which I was going to say, I don't want to do a lot of that because I really want this to feel fresh, but I feel like I could lift a tiny bit in this petal here. See what happens if I can do it without overworking it. Just using a dry brush and lifting a tiny bit of highlight. Okay, I think I don't want to mess too much. I'm going to let these dry. I am going to pause the recording for a little bit and check in with y'all. See how it's going. You can see my purple one is almost dry, but not completely. So while it's still damp, I'm going to add some fine lines so they don't look hard edge, but they bleed right in. I'm going to put a little bit of black in there, I think. Now it looks like there's already a lot of dark, but you'll see what I'm going to try and do. I'm not going to do black or, yeah, a little bit of black and a little bit of blue. I'm going to use my tiniest brush. I put it in black first and then a little bit of lavender. I'm wiping the edge here. I'm going to go back into black. All I want to do is add a tiny bit of these veins. So I'm looking for contrast. I have soft, blurry areas that are, I want to add the contrast of some thin, sharper lines.
Need to repin yourself, Wendra.
Oh, thank you. I thought I was pinned because on my screen I'm the largest. Let's see, how do I do this? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to see if I can pull out some thin lines here. I don't want too many, I just want enough. So I'm using, if you have this one of these tiny brushes. You see that little tiny bit? I might only have one or two in each petal. They're very thin. You can do it along the edge or right down the. Now, I just feel like this is just all kind of jumbled in here. So I'm going to decide that this one's in front of this one, which it is. And I'm going to go into my dark blue. And I'm using my tiny brush. I'm going to pull the edge out here. Lost and found. Yeah. So I'm liking the way this is drawing. I like this has a lot of light and then the dark. And then when we put the stems and the leaves in, it'll look even better. Okay.
However, mine is all, yours is a nice combination of sort of realistic petals and a lot of blurriness. Mine is like much more blurriness. So I think it probably blurred too much.
Mine did too, Susan. Mine did too.
I would rather you guys blur more than be highly controlled. I mean, unless that's your style. Some people are really good at like illustration style, which is fine, but it's nicer to have the blur if you don't, and then once it dries, you'll be able to go back in and pick out some fine lines and some edges.
Okay.
Or even, you don't have to wait till it's completely dry, but almost dry, so it doesn't get too blurry. Oh yeah, I'm reading the chat here. Happy Lunar Chinese New Year, everybody.
Is anyone an ox?
I am.
Oh, good. Oh, that's a good strong sign.
Yeah, and I are both oxes.
Get all your projects done.
Okay, so I'm going to go a little faster now just to see how it works doing multiple flowers quickly. So starting with the water. Leaving some white areas. I like to start with my burst of yellow. And go into blue. Ooh, that one's a good bleed. It started right in the dark. I'm being bold this time. Yeah, that's gonna dry.
Stay. Stay. Dude. Oh. 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 Oh.
Dude is an artist.
Oh, come on, buddy. Really making yourself a nuisance today.
This is just a wet brush here. Just a little bit of water. So started this one, but I can see this one's already losing its color. So I'm going to go back in. such a gray day here and I can't turn my overhead lights on or I'll get shadows. So I'm searching for where my blue paintbrush is. Okay. Hopefully this is blue. Oh, that's purple. Yikes. I'll use it there. So while this is still wet, I'm going to do might have to watch this one on high speed. There we go. See what happens if I put some blue into this purple, because even though it's a purple flower, purple is really just the warmer version of blue. So it might just be a blue flower that has some warm tones in it. I'm just going to use a wet brush again to soften this. I want the petals to be fatter and then come in. I'm looking for my black. It disappeared. Oh, here it is. Huh. That's weird. I don't know what that was. Sorry.
No, that was mine.
Oh. I thought that was mine, and I was like, Okay, so actually this one here is actually getting a little, I'm going to add a little more dark. See as it dries. It's a little babysitting. I go again with just a wet brush. It's damp, it's not wet, so I'm drying it on I went in the water and then I dried it off on my paper towel. And now I can use it to just Soften the edge here a little bit. I want this flower to sing a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit more blue into it. I'm going to go into my light turquoise because it has a very purplish, almost purplish gray cast. So I think I'm going to see if I can brighten it with a little bit of light turquoise. You're going to have to lift a tiny bit first, or it's just going to get the value. I don't want the value to be all muddy, so I'm lifting a tiny bit. A little bit of this turquoise in here to get it to kind of sing. Okay, now I'm going to do the stems. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I have a yellowy green and a cooler green. It's kind of hard to see on here, but I brought my yellowy one up on the top so you could see it better. I'm going to get my brush to a nice point and then decide where I want the green to come from. And just drag it down. And then do a leaf like we've done before. I'm going to do these little buds that are going to be holders for little flowers. Now I'm going to go into my darker green. Coming in on the shadow side. I want to do another stem. I want to have these little bed holders so I can get some more color in here. So if I do these, okay, so while it's still wet, I'm going to use probably my, I think to brighten up, maybe a little bit of my lighter blue. Might be my brush. Just gonna, I want it to be even lighter. Feel like a little bed that's about to open. I'm using turquoise here because I want the color to look really fresh and bright. I feel like these need to be anchored a little bit more. I think I'd like to try them also with maybe next time with a little more ground showing and some shadows, but it's working pretty small, so I didn't have room to. Once I can get another little bud in here, maybe. Maybe this one's opening. Okay, so now it's all feeling so pristine. I'm going to mess it up a little bit because I'm a messy person. I want my painting to be messy. Okay, brush wet. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I'm just gonna kind of blur some of this back in here and around. Soften a little bit. It's just using the side of my brush with a wet paintbrush, just giving it a little bit of dimension. Very subtle. See? While it's wet, I think I'm going to do a little splatter. And I think I want to use a little bit of my turquoisey just to get a brighter splatter that's a little more cheerful. I didn't finish my page goes further, but that's good for now. And I might use a little bit of this turquoise to soften up in here a little bit. Some of these edges blur. I'm not covering everything, just giving a little ambiance, a little imperfection to the natural world. Then I'll fold this, and then I'll have a pansy card. I'm gonna pause the recording, see what's going on. You guys are so quiet.